My parents had a 2-bay garage. We were out of 1 bay of that garage. We were working on other brands of shocks. We understand how serious the sport can be. And the way that the rule book is stated, that became an issue. We got told, stop doing that.
Ladies and gentlemen, you wanted it, you got it. The place for the untold, real, raw, and juicy stories of dirt track racing. It's Dirt Track Confessions. And now here's your host, Mandee Pauch Mahaney.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dirt Track Confessions. I'm your host, Mandee Pauch Mahaney. Today, we have an awesome guest, great friend. Everyone should know, probably knows, Brandon Planck. Brandon, how are you?
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having me. This is it's a cool opportunity to come on here, and it's something that we watch quite a bit. So to come on and talk with you, for everyone to listen to is something certainly new to me. But yeah, excited to kind of sit down with you here.
Oh, we're going behind scenes, guys. Behind the scenes. It might have had to pull a few teeth for him to be here, but he's here. So for some that might not know Brandon, Brandon is Dig Race Products. You guys are based out of Cortland, right? Cortland, New York?
Yeah, yep, Cortland, New York. It's about 30 minutes south of Syracuse. So for like the central New York based customers, everyone kind of knows where Cortland is. But when we get down into that like tri-state area of customers like yourself, yeah, you have to start to use Syracuse or Binghamton as a reference plane.
So Brandon, we're going to talk about it. We're going to dive into Dig, his business, but for some people to backtrack on, so Brandon grew up in racing. His dad, Dale, extremely successful, very successful. Has done a lot of stuff. I mean, I can't not talk about your mom. She's an amazing woman too. You have two beautiful parents. I mean, they've done an amazing job with you and your brother, and it blows my mind all that you guys have accomplished. And I mean, Brandon, how old are we? Like, how old are you?
32. Why, how old are you?
31.
Okay.
We're like in the same age range.
Yeah, same.
It amazes me. Both.
Same class.
We're same class. Our dads raced. Our moms like did the momming thing.
Yeah.
So kind of paint the picture for us. Like, what did life look like growing up for you?
Yeah, so I was actually talking to your brother a little bit about this, just with kind of both of our dads, racing. And so I kind of picture it similar to anybody who grew up in a racing family. Everything is very centralized around race cars, whether it's working in the shop throughout the weeks or going to the track itself, making road trips with my dad or my mom or one of the crew guys to go pick up parts. Really everything has always been centralized around racing. And for me, my dad really started his career racing a family car, so owned by his dad. And then I think it was like 2003 or 2000-ish. I don't know. I was still a little bit young there. He started to run for other people. So he had kind of left owning his own cars and family cars to running for other guys. And a couple of the teams were centrally located. But then a couple of the teams that he ran for a long time, like when he ran for a couple of guys up on the res, like that was 4 hours north. So he was gone 3 days out of the week, and then obviously traveling all over the place racing. So, but it never really, I don't know, I guess I didn't really like realize that he was gone that much, because he was, at most all of our lacrosse games and events. And, there was never a time where I was like, man, I haven't seen my dad in a while, So, so the dynamic kind of changed just geographically. But yeah, the racing has certainly been a staple. And we were flipping through albums, and there was a photo of my dad, and I forget which year it was, in the like late 70s, where there was a photo of him as a little kid holding up a plaque, and it was like Dale Planck Dirt Car 1977 Dirt Car Fan of the Year, and it was like presented by Glenn Donnelly. So I'm not the first one to grow up in a racing household. My dad kind of did the same thing, and just like I've been a fan my whole life, he's been a fan. his whole life too, with his dad racing. So yeah, it's something that's been a staple for us in the Planck household, just like it's been a staple in your household, right? So I think that we kind of relate on that. Same deal with Mike, really. With his dad racing, and yeah, it's like yeah, it's just something we all kind of connect on.
I think that's why we're friends. Not why,
Yeah,
but
right.
like we just you just get it, right? You
Yeah.
just like I mean, I didn't do sports in high school, but growing up, like dad was always gone. Dad missed out on a lot of things. Mom was always around. Mom was taking us here, mom was taking us there. And then it's like, wow. I mean, you got to think about our dads. Like, at least they got to do what they wanted to do, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say they missed out on a lot, but at the same time, like, I feel racing kept us together.
Yeah, there's a dynamic there. So I don't know. It's your podcast. Am I allowed to ask you questions? Is so like your your dad's career, the teams that he kind of drove for, was that all really pretty centrally located to your guys' house, or was there a bit of traveling there? Or
I mean, by the time I was born, dad was doing sprint cars. So
um,
I think is it Tower City Zemco's based out of. So dad didn't have to go and maintain those cars. So like he would just show up with a suitcase. But by the time I was old enough, he was more Flemington, New Egypt, East Windsor.
okay, a little bit closer.
Yeah, so he was close. I mean, he still traveled, but again, by 2000s, like he was maintaining the cars like home. Yeah.
Okay, okay, yep. So that helps, just in the grand scheme of things there.
Yeah. So, I like that you touched on that a little bit before, is like I don't want to say you're a fan first, but I always love is that it just still blows my mind is like I knew your brother before I knew you.
All
Like,
right.
so I think I was in my teens when, I started hanging out with your brother and, he was into racing. Like, I'm not saying you
Yeah,
weren't,
yeah.
like, he raced, but, you chose more of the mechanical side, which is interesting. So, what would you say like fascinates you? Like, how did you decide? Did you ever dabble into racing or?
Yeah, yeah. So me and my brother both ran karts. We ran Frozen Ocean and Paradise. For geez, I don't know, since I was maybe 12. We ran a bunch of go-karts. And then when Steve was 16, 17-ish, we got a family crate car. In I continued to run some hit or miss go-kart stuff, but it seemed like when Steve started running big cars, the focus really shifted to try to, get him going in big cars. And he was in a unique situation where he really hit the ground running. Like a lot of guys who get into a car, it takes them a while to get up to speed. And I'm not exaggerating. I think we were only 3 or 4 weeks in, and Steve was battling for wins at Weed Sport in the crate class. Like he really picked it up quickly.
Yeah.
So I think when you factor in like how well he was doing, it almost pulled a little bit more resources or attention to that because I didn't have my permit yet, right? I was still my dad would take me to go run Paradise once in a while, and it was awesome. Like I was having fun with it. I thought, like growing up, that I was going to be a professional race car driver. Like my whole childhood. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
this is what my dad does. Why would I do anything different, right? Like it's not even part of the equation. And uh, at a young age, I would probably say right around that time that I got into go-karts, my parents quickly put a nix to that idea. The concept of me.
Missed that window.
Yeah, and I think that anytime that you're trying to race for a living, there's a lot of highs and lows, right? Like the highs are awesome, like big wins and victories, it's awesome. But then the lows are really low in that regard too. And I think that my parents really wanted a different path for us. So we were able to race because we loved racing, but we knew that it was never going to be a career for us, at least. Like they kind of put a kibosh on that early. So I kind of uh, I put a big focus into playing lacrosse. So team sports, all through, you know, middle school and junior high and senior high. And I kind of started to form this idea that, how can I be involved in the racing world, but not as a driver? So I never really imagined, having our own business, but I always knew that if I could go to school and get an education, I would hope to be a part of a company within the racing industry. And um, probably like my sophomore year of high school, I really started to think about kind of what interests me the most. And, growing up around the race shop, I always loved, taking things apart and putting things together and seeing how things work. And it really kind of pushed me towards that engineering route. But I didn't realize how hard engineering school is, to be honest with you. So I started to kind of formulate this plan. I wanted to go to school for engineering, and I really wanted to play lacrosse at a high level as well. It's just like the competitive nature in everybody, right? Like if you go do something, you want to try to play at the highest level. So my sophomore year, I had a meeting with a guidance counselor and told her I want to go and play Division I lacrosse, and I want to go to school for mechanical engineering. And she like about laughed me out of there. She's like, well, first off, like the lacrosse you might be able to do, right? I haven't seen you play, but if you're, good enough and you can go compete at that level, that's great. But let's talk about the engineering side of things. And she started to tell me about how a lot of these engineering students are in advanced math. They're in honors physics, honors chemistry, right? They're in all of these things that I haven't taken yet, but I'm about to. So I actually had to petition into all those classes. So I was going to these teachers, and I had to take a summer course in math, and I knew that I needed these, higher level kind of prerequisite classes. So I'm not going to say that I was kind of goofing off in high school, but I certainly stepped it up my junior and senior year after having that meeting. And she told me, like, basically, it's not possible unless you kind of kick yourself in gear here. So, yeah, so then I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship offer to Binghamton University. I got accepted into the engineering program there. So yeah, I played 4 years of Division I lacrosse and did just as many years of mechanical engineering. So that's a tall
That's
task.
Dude, listen. I remember it was so I went to a community college for my first 2 years and then I
Okay, yeah.
and my guidance counselor, I told him because I think my first 2 years, I tried like three different things because I was like, oh, I'm gonna,
Okay, just searching a little bit.
yeah, like trying to figure out what I wanted,
Yeah.
what I wanted to be. And I finally figured it out and I told him, and he was like, pretty like straight looked at me and he was like, you're better off just like dropping out of college because it's all a matter of the people you know. And I'm
Okay.
like, it's not wrong. But at the same time, I'm
Yes.
like, this is your job and you're telling me to drop out. I was
Yeah. Yeah, that's unique. Yeah.
yeah, and I like I still wish I knew who he was because he wasn't wrong, but at the same time, like he was wrong. I don't know. It was just so wild because it's like it's a different, I don't know. Being in racing, like you needed to know the stuff that you learned to apply it. Me, yes, but like did I end up doing public relations? Not really, no. Too
Yeah, and I think you probably take more than just the schooling out of it too. Like when you went, you had to interact with other students and other people, and but then again, you're probably using skills that you learned outside of that area to even interact in that atmosphere too. So yeah, it's funny how things kind of like how many times have you been asked what your GPA was? Like it doesn't matter, you know.
I'd be happy to tell you because I was very proud, but no.
Yeah.
No. So, okay, so, well, okay, you did mechanics, but what led you in the direction of shocks?
Yeah, so um hold on, sorry. I've been trying to get that itch for a while here. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, so kind of by chance, like growing up, my dad always worked on his own shocks, and man, I remember even like in the like mid to late 90s, there was conversations, and one of his crew guys always had a shock piston that he would kind of like flip around and he'd kind of tinker with. So as I was old enough to be in college at this point, I had a pretty good understanding of how a shock worked, at least basic fundamentals. And he was working on his own shocks. So I wasn't necessarily involved with helping him very much, but I was understanding what he was doing, and whether he was changing shims or themselves or bleed, or there's these different things that you can kind of tune a shock with. So I was familiar with shocks. And the spring semester of my freshman year of college, like my closest buddy actually sat down and showed me a job description on Indeed that was a suspension development or suspension design engineering internship. And I was like, man, this is perfect. Yeah. And it was pretty close to home. It was over in Ithaca, New York. It was a place called High Gear Suspension. So High Gear specializes in the power sports industry, mainly shocks and kind of suspension components and linkages in that power sports world. So power sports meaning ATVs, snowmobiles, motorcycles, side by sides. I applied for the internship that summer and was able to kind of get that. It seemed like a natural fit with my at least a basic knowledge of shocks. From just growing up around my dad. So then at High Gear, interned that summer, and then it basically evolved into any week or break from college. I was there. I was hooked. Like they were doing, or we were doing development work, like product development for OEM replacement parts. So there's a big aftermarket world for guys like the DIY guys that want to replace their shock shafts to their Arctic Cat snowmobile in their own shop, right? So we were developing these product lines, or adding to the product lines, and then we were also creating aftermarket components for like the major shock manufacturers. So all the OEMs like the Polaris, the Arctic Cat, the Yamaha, there's a variety of shock brands. So there I was doing engineering design and 3D modeling of these components, whether they're replacement parts or aftermarket components for all these different brands. So I was kind of seeing inside of how all these different companies were kind of skinning the same cat, right? Like you see, okay, this brand does something this way, and then the other brand does something the other way. So I had a lot of exposure to all these different brands, and the machining processes behind it, and there's a lot that goes into shocks with surface finishes and tolerances, and you like assume you want everything shiny, but too shiny is actually sticky. So there's all these things that I learned. So that's really what got me really involved with shocks, especially the 3D modeling and engineering design behind it, and the kind of calculations that go with it. And then after college, I got hired on full time there, as essentially like the lead, product development engineer there. And that's where I was before we started Dig full time.
So shout out to the friend that found that ad on Indeed.
Yeah, he was he was a big help in college. His name is Keegan. He's a good dude, and Keegan was definitely smarter than me in college, and he did a really good job at explaining things in a little bit simpler terms, where it would let me go, aha, okay, yep, I understand this. So it was kind of like professor, then to Keegan, then to me, and then we all understood. So it worked out pretty good.
Okay, so that's amazing. And it amazes me. I mean, Mike actually told me about that job. I don't know how he knows, but he apparently,
Yeah, interesting.
yeah, he's like, you got to ask him about how he got into shocks. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
well, I will ask him. So, okay, so you went from there. How does one even go about starting a business? Like this goes back to my guidance counselor saying like, hey, you need to know
Yeah.
people. You know people, like what steps did you take? Did you just start making shocks and start dabbling? Like what did that look like? I don't
Yeah. Yeah, so it really ties back into my dad. So I worked at Higer for a few years out of college, and the power sports industry is cool, right? Like I have always liked things that look cool and go fast. It's right up my alley. But the true love is certainly dirt modified racing, in particular, but especially oval racing, oval track racing. So um, yeah, so I got to the point where I was um, you know, working steadily, and then my dad was kind of going through some transitions of stepping out of the driver's seat and doing consulting work for a handful of drivers at that point. He was kind of bouncing between, not necessarily bouncing from one to the other, but just working with a bunch at the same time. Like he would go on Friday night with one, and then go Saturday night with the other, and a midweek show with another, and it seemed like he was really enjoying that aspect of it, kind of trying to relay his experiences and talking to especially the younger drivers like, hey, I know that this isn't comfortable, but it's what it feels like, and it's got to be done, right? Like he's kind of using that experience to help them. And so he was kind of transitioning to more of a consulting side of things. These drivers that he was helping, he was working on their shocks, trying to kind of get the cars more drivable for the really green drivers that were really low experienced. He was like tying the fronts down a ton to make sure the car turns. Because if you get in a car for the first time and it doesn't turn, you become uncomfortable really quick. So yeah, so he was working on shocks and he was doing consulting, and I started to kind of think about what it would be like to maybe incorporate what he was doing into a business at that point. So the name Dig, like we get asked a lot, like, hey, what's that stand for? Like, what does that stand for? And it's not an acronym. It doesn't, necessarily stand for anything. We wanted to try to create a name that was kind of separated from our last name because of his, racing career. Um, and yeah, so we came up with Dig and made the logo, and Dig kind of stuck. But that's really how it started. So.
Okay, so this just takes me back to things looking shiny and badass because that's like your brand. It's badass. I love it.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Love it. I love it. So, okay, you know, what was it like taking off with your business? I mean, because like, just answer that question because I'm totally gonna get ahead of myself.
Are you enjoying this episode, want even more, or want a closer connection to the DTU fam? Join us over in Club DTU, where you'll receive early access to all of our podcasts, live race day updates, exclusive content, special merchandise, discounts, a community chat, personal recognition, and so much more. All inside one place, Club DTU.
Yeah. Okay. So we started really kind of a grassroots effort. It was my parents had a 2-bay garage. We were out of 1 bay of that garage, and we were working on other brands of shocks. And we probably did that for a year and a half, where we were taking existing shocks and revalving them, and going to the track and trying to work with guys. And it got to the point where we were trying to make other brands of shocks do things that we couldn't get them to. So what it turned into is just with my skill set of kind of designing and producing parts, we started making parts for those other shocks, and that became an issue. Like the way that the rule book is stated is it needs to be an in-stock part with the manufacturer. So we kind of we didn't necessarily get our wrist slapped, but we got kind of like told stop doing that, right?
It's a gray area, but you get
Yeah, so
some kind
yeah,
of
so
one way or the other.
yeah, so when that happened, I kind of pitched it to my dad, like, hey, I think that we have some of these critical parts, are ready, right? Like I think that we could, uh, maybe create the rest of the shock, So that's when kind of the process started, and that the actual design process of the shock took a while. I was trying to do it just on the weekends and at night, but it's a lot, to make something like that, that has so many intricacies to it, and the tolerances are really tight on shocks. It kind of got to the point where I talked to Julie, and
I was gonna say, where does Julie fit into the mix of
yeah,
weeknights?
yeah, a big part of it to actually get off the ground. So, a little bit of backstory. I really wanted to try to enter into the auto racing market, and I went through a quite lengthy process interview with a now competing shock brand, and I thought that's what I was going to do. Like I'm going to go and be an engineer at a different company X, and
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly like that. Let's do it.
Company X, and yeah, so I thought I was going to do that, and I kind of did some soul searching with my parents, and it would have been abandoning the Dig brand, because you can't really be at a company and then have your dad home competing against you, right? Like that's just not the dynamic we were looking for, and yeah, so I kind of relayed my, I don't know if it was dreams, maybe hopes to Julie about what I thought we could do and what I thought we could make, and maybe the potential of what it could turn into. And she told me that if I wanted to try to do this full time and dedicate all of the uh, effort and resources to developing a shock and trying to bring it to market, she said I have 6 months. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I was like, go ahead, honey. It's gonna be great. She gave you a
yeah.
time
Well,
for
she
her.
basically said, give it 6 months and let's see where it's at, right? At the end of the 6 months, if it looks like it's not going to materialize, you got to go get another engineering job, right? So I've always kind of like leaned on that as like, okay, worst case scenario, I can rely on this, skill set. If I need to go get a job, I hopefully can go get another job, right? It's still an unknown.
Yeah.
Um, so then 6 months passed by and we still didn't have anything other than like 3D printed models of like body caps. We spent a long time just trying to, we would walk the pit area, or I would walk the pit area, and I would, I would go to everyone's pit boxes and ask them what brand of tools they use. And a guy would say, I use Snap-on, Mac, Craftsman, right? And I was actually measuring all of the 3/4 inch ratchet wrenches, because I wanted to make sure that the actual body cap on her shock had a relief, so that you could actually get a ratchet wrench on. So just kind of an ergonomic thing. But man, I spent a while just trying to make sure that no matter what brand of tool this guy has, he's going to be able to install the shock on his car. So yeah, so we went through a bunch of 3D print revisions, and at the end of 6 months, we had a 3D print, we had a model, and then Julie basically said like, all right, it's making progress. Let's give it another 6 months, so that'll be a year. And yeah, I mean that was in 2017, so we're 7 years later now, and we got a couple shock lines, and we're not in my parents' garage anymore. And yeah, it's cool.
Hey. And
Yeah,
wait,
thanks.
gotta give a shout out because like newly married, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and that's yeah, she's great, and yeah, she's a big part of this deal. And every time that I like tell somebody that story, whether we're at like a trade show or even some of my family members that didn't know, she always sits in the back and she's like, I didn't do anything. It's like, well, you might not have like felt like you were doing anything, but I really don't know if Dig would have materialized into what it is without her saying like, yeah, let's go for it, and we'll figure it out if it doesn't work out. So
Need that like backbone.
yeah, I needed
Yeah.
it.
Oh, she's
Yeah,
amazing.
but
So,
really thankful for that. So
well, we love her. I love
yeah,
her.
she's great.
Okay,
Yeah,
so been 7 years. Let's talk about like you have a lot of serious race teams that run your shocks. What
yeah.
is that like knowing where you started 7 years ago in,
Yeah.
I want to say like in mom and dad's basement, but apparently it was in the garage. But
No,
like,
it wasn't a big garage. It wasn't a big garage. I would want to say the space that we were in was maybe like 200 square feet, like 20 by 10 would be a good
Mhm.
analogy. I was talking to my mom about that. We put an addition on the shop here. And she had asked, what is the total square footage now? And I was like, I think it's like around 2,800 square feet. And she's like, it's a lot bigger than our single car garage.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've certainly we went from my parents' garage and then we rented a commercial space that was, I don't know, that was probably still small, less than 1,000 square feet. And then we were able to purchase this building and then put an addition on. So it's nice having a, kind of a commercial storefront space just off the highway to come to. So
Amazing. So, okay. Like again, so you went from the small car garage to the building you're located.
yeah.
Well, let's talk about the drivers.
Oh
Like
yeah, sorry, I derailed from that.
I'm bringing you
Yeah,
I'm bringing you back in. I got you.
yeah, sorry.
How does that feel? Like that's a
Yeah,
freaking
no, it's
that's amazing.
yeah, it's really, something to be really proud of. And, a lot of these guys, especially the more experienced guys, are guys that I grew up watching every weekend, right? My dad was racing against these guys. Like, I guess the first ones that come to mind are like Jimmy Phelps and Alan Johnson. Like these guys are really good race car drivers. And, I really wasn't happy when they pulled in the gate to race against my dad, right? Like they're established and have a lot of success. And then yeah, it's our customer base is unique because we have the experienced guys that have won a bunch, and then we have experienced guys that are ultra capable of winning, like Mike, and then we have kind of really young guys too, like a Tanner Van Doren comes to mind as being a young kid that's really capable and learning a lot all the time. Um, and then we have guys that are just racing for fun. And some guys are racing because it's a bucket list thing that maybe they wanted to do. Like they retire and they buy a car. So what do they need to go race? Yeah, there's kind of a big variety of experience level, but yeah, the touring modified teams who are racing for a living and racing at a really high level and have expectations and are capable of going and winning big races. Yeah, that'll get you nerved up. Trying to deliver the best product or best service. To try to be a small part of that success when it does come.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, as if shocks are a small part of the win.
Well, they're
Like you're playing yourself down.
no,
Okay.
it's no, they're certainly important, but it takes a whole package. That's the thing.
Not
It's
as
really
fun.
difficult. But yeah, they're a big they're a big part of the way that it handles, that's for sure.
Yes.
So
Okay. So I I don't know if I've ever told you, not that it matters, but like anyone that ever asks, like I always talk you and your dad up. Like you, your family, like everything dig. It's like,
oh yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
hey, anytime. That's why you're here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love your customer support. You guys like you're always people would say ask me. I mean, ask Mike, but ask me like, oh, what do you think of Dig Shocks? I'm like, they're at every race.
Yeah.
They're always there. Like customer support, like top line. I mean, there's plenty of other brands out there and companies and shocks, but you guys are like you are hub central, and so that kind of has me want to touch on like I know it's you and dad, but like has it ever crossed your mind to venture outside of modifieds and sportsmen?
Yeah, I mean, we're at the races because we want to be there, to be honest with you. Like nobody's paying us to be there. But yeah, we like going to the races and our heart definitely lies in our style of modifieds. But it doesn't mean that we don't like other types of racing. Primarily dirt oval track stuff. Like I don't there's a couple markets that I don't think you'll ever see us in. But we've started to enter into a couple different markets. Like we have a couple street stock cars that have had success. Like Jimmy Blewett won that big 10 grand a race or 10 grand a win race at Bridgeport, and that was on dig shocks. And we've been having we probably have, geez, I don't know, maybe 10 to 12 mod light cars on digs now too. Yeah, like Kyle Demo switched at Brewerton, and he had success right out of the bat or right out of the gate, which is cool. I don't know. We've been talking about some things. It's hard to point in a direction until we're doing it. But yeah, we have we have a really kind of great distribution network inside New York and Pennsylvania and Quebec and dealer in Australia. And yeah, we've been talking about trying to do something. But it's on the smaller car side of things. So
Yeah. That is amazing. I can't wait until we talk again in another 7 years.
yeah, right. We'll see where it is.
Yeah, when there's gonna be like 20 of you guys instead of just you and dad, it's gonna be
Yeah.
amazing. Oh my God. So okay, let's tap kind of like more entrepreneurial side here.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, your brand, holding yourself together, representing your business. Like I know what that's all about because I went to school to learn about reputation, but I love that you always come across as very serious. I feel you do like such a phenomenal job, upholding
Thanks.
yourself, you're welcome, upholding your brand, but like, it's gotta be hard. I don't know, because like I relate you and Mike very similarly because I feel like you guys have very similar personalities. Like take
Okay.
you away from the track, you guys are fun as hell, right? But when you're there, it's like game on, race mode, it's all business, no one knows otherwise.
Yeah, I think I get that from my dad a little bit. Like obviously, my dad is like when you take the serious stuff away, he's having a good time and he's the first one to crack a joke to you. But yeah, I think that it's maybe because we understand how serious the sport can be, and especially on like the product side of things, guys are spending hard-earned money on a product and a service to go along with it. So I mean, the last thing that we want is for somebody to think that we're not taking it seriously because we are. So when you factor in the finance, the financial side of things, along with like that true kind of desire to win, I think that's where it kind of gets like we're locked in, we're doing our best, and we're focused on the race until the race is over. And I think that it's something where I don't know, maybe I'll relate it back to like playing college sports. Like as you would travel with a team, you travel wearing, your full team's colors, right? So when you go out to dinner, when you are even walking around campus, if you are wearing your team on your chest, you are expected to, or we're expected to essentially be proper.
You
So
represent them.
yeah, and it's not even, I don't really view it as an act. I think it's just kind of been engraved in me, and I really try to be myself, and we genuinely want to win. Like we've never had a conversation where my dad and I have sat in this office and said, "How are we going to sell more shocks?" Like the the conversation is never there. It's always, how are we going to get a little bit more grip? How are we going to get maybe a little bit more control in areas where the cars are a little bouncy, or yeah, like the focus is winning essentially. And it's a performance-based industry, and it's pretty cutthroat. Like if you're in a performance-based industry, you got to try to perform at the highest level. And I think that's maybe where that seriousness comes from.
I feel it's, what is it? Quality over quantity.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're lucky that we have a lot of guys now, and there's a lot of shocks out there. But yeah, every shock that gets sent out the door is, mainly built by my dad and yeah, myself. So if there's an issue, we always joke around, like if there's any issue, it's his fault. And he says the same thing about me. Like if there's any issue, it's probably Brandon. So
Oh, it's you or Dale?
well, we like point the finger at each other, right?
Okay, I got
So
it.
it just depends on who you ask. So, but no, he
So
does a really good job.
that totally has me wanting to know, like, if you're okay with sharing it, is he gives me the head tilt, is like
Yeah. Don't
they're
know what
like mental struggles, like with running your own business, with knowing that these people are trusting you to like bolt these onto their cars,
yeah.
like I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
he's so anxious.
No,
You
it is.
have to have confidence, of course, but at the same time, it's like all of these people are taking trust in you.
Yeah. Yeah. There's certainly a pressure factor there. That we both feel. My dad and I both feel that, and it's a situation where we try to take kind of liability where liability is due. And it's something where you sometimes, if a situation happens, you have to kind of look at like, could this have been avoided on our end? Yes or no, right? Like if it could have been, then we need to essentially own up to that and try to figure out a solution that it doesn't happen again. And then sometimes there's situations that are just outside of your control that are tough to, take liability for, like like if you're racing with a guy and you make heavy contact with a lap car while you're leading, right? And then something breaks, whether it's the shock or whatever, right? If there's contact, or I guess if there's a reason for it breaking, it certainly makes you feel better about it. But yeah, we try to keep the quality as high as absolute possible. And I think when we push so hard to deliver kind of the best product that we're physically capable of, if there is any issue, we essentially tried our best, right? Like if something does break, it reached a limit that it just couldn't take, right? And it broke. So mainly, like we're in our world, we use a 1/2 inch diameter shock shaft. And I should knock on wood because it's not overly common. But yeah, things break. We're asking a lot out of that, shaft. And um, yeah, it's something where we try to order the, best material we can. And, it's yeah, it's certainly it can be a mentally tasking thing, because I guess I'm kind of rambling here, but
Go ahead.
because it is something that it is designed by us. And even if I make it in the computer, I run it by my dad, or we 3D print a lot of stuff. And it's a team decision, and my dad makes revisions, and then we tweak on it from there. And some things are just purely created by necessity, right? Like my dad will spend an afternoon working on a shock, and he'll say, man, I wish we could just get it to do this instead of this. What is going on here? And then maybe that generates a new product internally. So because we're creating the stuff ourselves, you end up kind of feeling like it's your little baby.
Yeah.
So somebody like bashes it, or doesn't like it, or whatever the case is, you like take it personally. It's like, okay, you ran a couple races and you didn't like dig shocks, and you're like, wow, well, that means you don't like me. Like I really tried my best on that, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. So I always love when you guys like Mike wins, you're like one of the first ones to text us.
Oh,
Like
so excited.
you genuinely like I don't want to say vicariously live through us, but like you like you said, you feel like you are a part of the team. And I
Yeah.
love that's it's everything. It's
Yeah, no,
everything.
I am living vicariously through you guys. Like I'm, Mike included, anybody who's like really good at driving race cars, I'm incredibly jealous of that. Like I remember I wanted to be a race car driver, right? So, and I'm not good at it. Like I've hot lapped a couple cars, and
Found what you're good at, dude. You found
yeah, yeah, but I want to be a good race car driver. Deep down, I want to be good at that.
there's
So
still there's still time. We got you. So, okay. I feel like you kind of might touch on this a little bit, but like, what would you say were some learning curves of running your business or
yeah. Yeah, so going to school for engineering, you don't really learn necessarily a lot about like the business planning side of things. And I really felt like we were doing an okay job really right up until COVID hit. And when the traditional material suppliers that go to the machine shop are just telling you that there's no material to be sent, right? It's a big issue. So I think that was probably one of the struggles, was trying to maybe forecast a little bit further out. And time helped that too. Like, we got an idea, okay, we sell on average X amount of shocks per year. X of them are steel, X of them are aluminum. So we're able to kind of stay up on, whether it's raw material ordering or O-ring ordering. Like, we went through a phase where there's one O-ring in a shock where every place we called was telling us it was 10 to 12 week lead time to get this O-ring. And that's a big issue when every shock you make takes that same O-ring, right? So that was certainly a struggle. And I I've really leaned on my mom for the kind of accounting and bookkeeping side of things. So my dad is essentially everything shocks and setup and car, and I really lean on him and his expertise in that regard. And then my mom is also she works at Cornell full time, but it seems like right when she gets off work, she heads this way over to the shop, and she's the one who kind of helped form the business entity. And like, when we filed for an LLC, I didn't really know what that entailed. And yeah, now we have the building, and we invested in a Haas CNC turning center. So now we're depreciating things, and all this, the tax side of things. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of turned into a case where it's like, if there's anything that you need from me, let me know. And she's, really helping handle that. But, if I were to go back and maybe take an elective, or maybe, do some more research on things, I probably would have focused a little bit more on that, accounting, bookkeeping, tax side of things. So yeah, she's really holding me up there, like, with a lot of help.
Love her, love her. Hey, I took an accounting class.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Did. I didn't like it, but I passed.
I didn't like it, but I passed.
Not
Yeah,
my cup of tea.
yeah. I was actually just thinking about you, like, as I was talking there, because one thing with us, because it's just me and my dad, we've really developed a big network of people, and kind of utilizing the skills that they're good at. So whether it's our, distributors kind of helping us through, like, hey, how many of these things should we be ordering every year? Or we've even had situations where, like, Mike and other drivers have said, like, hey, internally, I think if we introduced this, it might be a little bit better, or we could do something a little bit different. Maybe it's not an improvement or a disadvantage. Maybe it's just we could increase our capabilities if we did this. And then, like, with yourself and, like, the commercial, like, people always ask me, like, hey, who made the commercial? Like, that thing's cool. So, and then I got to give you your plug there on making a cool commercial. And yeah, it's gonna keep on this year as well. We're gonna run the same one for a bit at least. So until you make another one, we're using it.
Okay, no pressure. No.
Yeah, no pressure. Yeah.
It helps to know people, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's cool. And people that are able to do things at a high level, and that's cool to be surrounded with. So
We all work together, and I love that. So
yeah.
we'll wrap this up. What would you say, like, tip? Any kind of tip. It can be a business tip, it can be a shock tip, it can be
Oh man.
don't get married tip. I don't know.
No. Yeah. If you yeah.
We're
I
definitely
don't know.
married. We're promoting marriage, just like I
Yes, promoting marriage. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of, when you told me, or when we kind of talked and we were talking about the entrepreneur, side of things, or starting a business, I was kind of trying to think of maybe, like, my best advice, or, like, hardest lesson learned, maybe. In that part's really tough, because when you start your business, it might not be the same as somebody else's, and if somebody else has one that's really similar, they're probably not going to talk to you about it. And the road isn't necessarily paved. So I guess one thing that I've kind of, like, set out to do, or we've collectively set out to do at Dig, is we've tried to let the business kind of scale itself based on its own success. So essentially it's let's start with this product. If it sells and we have success with it, we can use the proceeds to maybe do the next one, right? Or if you sell a a bunch of shocks and you can now put more in stock. So, instead of trying to like go and get a bunch of, financing together or use up a bunch of kind of liquid capital, try to let it scale itself and kind of grow organically. And yeah, when you got good drivers and people and distributors and supporters, it'll grow itself. And I'm super thankful for everybody that kind of stands behind the Dig brand and yes, helps us go. I feel like I'm kind of being viewed as the face, but it's certainly my dad is a huge part of it, and as equal of a part of it as I am, and it's everybody behind it that pushes it. So if you can get something off the ground, get people behind it, and let it kind of organically grow, I really think that's the best kind of path. Not because that's what we've tried to do, but just because I feel like it's less scary maybe to
It's word of mouth, but it's organic marketing. It's
yeah.
genius. It's genius. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna let you go because obviously
Yeah.
you are needed. Dude, thank you so much for being on here. Nailed it. I appreciate it. This is
Yeah, thanks for having me.
absolutely. So everyone, if you're watching, listening, like this, share this, tag Brandon, tag Dig, go get yourself some shocks. If you're not on Dig yet, you're wrong. You're not on it. You are wrong. We're gonna make new t-shirts of that this year.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's gonna get
I
approval,
know
but
it's too cocky. I know.
yeah.
It's fine. I'm gonna
No.
make it myself. I'll make it myself. It's fine. But dude, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys at the races. So yeah.